So, hello everybody. I'm Lisa. I'm the regular giving officer for the Darrow team here at the University of Leicester. Thank you for attending this evening's Festival of Change event. I'm thrilled that so many of our alumni and friends are able to join us this evening from all over the world, and I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to everyone here this evening. So, Dr. Josh Smalley, our very own culinary chemist, that's really hard to say, gardener and star baker, will be starting his talk very shortly. Josh is a chemist by trade, working as a postdoctoral researcher within our School of Chemistry, which is celebrating its centenary year in 2025. Josh's show-stopping bakes and attention to detail led him to the final of Series 14 of the Great British Bake Off, during which I do recall screaming at the telly with my 9-year-old son shouting, "Come on, Josh!" Anyway, during this talk, Josh will be sharing his journey as a scientist, explaining how he combines his successful research career and his passion for food. Before he does, please feel free to keep your videos on for the duration of the event. However, I do ask that you please keep your microphones on mute so that we can all hear Josh clearly. As a reminder, you can find the microphone and camera button at the top of your screens. Also, please don't worry if you are struggling to mute yourself, as a member of the alumni engagement team will be able to support you with this and turn it off on your behalf. We'd love for you to post your questions for the Q&A in the chat box, and we'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A session towards the end of the talk. Now, please join me in welcoming Dr. Josh live from his on-campus office for this presentation on the Culinary Chemist. Over to you, Josh.
Hello, yes, absolute pleasure to be giving this talk today, and really looking forward to giving you a very varied presentation. We're going to have a bit of my journey through the university, from undergraduate all the way through to postdoc, along with some of the research I've done along the way, and obviously there'll be a big flavour of baking in there as well. So I shall share my slides and then we can get started. So my talk today, I'm going to be giving you a insight into my journey as a chemist at the University of Leicester, giving you a little snapshot of some of the research that I did as part of my PhD and my postdoc as well. And then obviously I shall go into give you a flavour of some of the baking that I've been getting up to in a very popular TV show that I was on last year. So you've got to endure a few slides of research before you can see the baking. So on to the first bit, which is just saying, basically, first of all, baking is definitely, first and foremost, a science. It's definitely the two things, science and baking, have really helped me push each of them to another level. I take loads of inspiration from my chemistry in my baking, and vice versa. I take a lot of the skills that I've learned and perfecting things in doing my baking, and I take that into the lab as well. So they've really helped me push each one to another level, and I find so much similarity between the two. And yeah, I just find so much excitement, and they are definitely my two biggest passions. And as you'll have seen last year, science definitely helped me with my baking, and it took me through to the final of the Great British Bake Off, the final three on the right, as you can see. So I shall now just go right back to the beginning and just go through my chemistry journey at the University of Leicester, which started back in 2014 as an undergraduate. I did a degree, MChem, pharmaceutical chemistry, which was absolutely fantastic. I loved it. I'm Leicester through and through. I was born in Bristol. I'm still live in Bristol, so I've never yet left. But yeah, I love my undergraduate degree course, and it was a four-year degree. My third year was spent in industry in Nottingham at Signature, and that was a fantastic experience in a lab setting, which gave me all of this knowledge, which I brought back in my fourth year for my final year project. And then I had the bug then, and the want to continue chemistry as a career, so I followed it into a PhD. My PhD was with Dr James Hodgkinson here at Leicester, and it was a GTA PhD, which is a graduate teaching assistant. And with that, that meant that 80% of my time was doing the research and 20% was as a staff member, in effect, helping with the teaching of the undergraduate course. So I'd be in the lab, as you can see right in the middle. I'd be helping to the undergraduate students to get through their first, second, and third year experiments. And I used to absolutely love doing that part of it. I love to teach, and that was a really rewarding part of my PhD alongside the research. On the right there is me at my fume hood, which actually is very close to where I'm sat. It's just behind the wall where I'm sat right now in the office. So I've been there now for 4 years as a PhD and 2 years as a postdoc as well. So not left that spot. And I love to get involved in outreach activities. As you can see, bottom left, that was at the Botanic Gardens last year, doing our famous School of Chemistry liquid nitrogen ice cream. So on to now a little bit of research, and I was just going to summarize basically 4, 5, 6 years worth of work into a few slides. So it's going to be some bits are a little science heavy, but it's very, very pictorial. You should be able to follow it. And then after that, we're going to go on to some baking. So first of all, the premise of my project was to target a particular class of enzymes, which are called histone deacetylase enzymes, or HDACs for short. These are these epigenetic regulators, and they catalyze the removal of a particular group of a protein that's inside our cell. So So if you just follow the pictures, as opposed to trying to look at the words, on the left-hand side, we've got a cell, the nucleus, the chromosome inside the nucleus, and the chromosomes are made up of these chromatin fibers. And these chromatin fibers consist of your DNA wrapped around these green blobs, which are histones. And on these green blobs, histones, there's an acetyl group, which is for short here put as AC, and the HDAC enzymes, which are in orange, is an orange. That the function of that enzyme is to remove those acetyl groups, and it results in compacting of chromatin, and that can signal for gene repression, which we need cells to do that. And we need the HDAC enzymes, they are essential. But in diseases such as cancer, this occurrence can become very abnormal, and we can get upregulated levels of this, and it can cause problems. So we want to be able to target these enzymes to deal with them. So there's 18 HDACs in the human genome, and these are split into 2 different classes, and you don't need to worry about any of the numbers below, other than the fact that at the bottom left, HDACs 1, 2, and 3 are the ones that are particularly involved in the process I've just described above, and they're the ones, therefore, that we wanted to target. And the way in which we wanted to target them was using PROTACs. These are a bifunctional molecule, as you can see on the left-hand side. So it's bifunctional, it's got 2 ends to it, an inhibitor at one end and a ligand at the other end, and they're joined together via a linker. And so the way in which these work, if we go across, so imagine the protein of interest, which is written as POI there, imagine that as my HDAC enzyme. This is the one we want, this is the protein that we're looking to target. One end of the PROTAC molecule binds to that. The other end of it recruits this green E3 ligase, and together what we've done is we've formed a ternary complex. We have brought the orange protein, dark orange protein on the left, the green ligase on the right. We've brought those into close proximity via this double-ended PROTAC molecule to do that. And by doing it, what can happen is we can end up with the transfer of a ubiquitin protein, which is summarized there as UB, and that can be transferred across now to a residue on your orange protein of interest. This happens multiple times, and you get this polyubiquitin chain. And when you have this long chain, that can tag. It acts as like a barcode or a marker now for that protein to be degraded in the cell, so to be removed. And that's what happens. So you can see here the protein of interest has come off. The proteasome basically just chews up and chops up all these proteins, degrades them. And so what the overall premise of that whole scheme is, what we've done is we've taken our protein of interest at the top and we've got rid of it. So we could be able to remove it. So if we had upregulated levels of HDAC, we could work via this scheme and we could completely remove it, and we can decrease the levels. And this can work in a catalytic manner, meaning you've got a full cycle. So we reform the PROTAC at the end, and that's really, really good as a potential drug molecule, because if it can work in a catalytic manner, it means that we can have very low levels or low concentrations of these compounds, because they can work multiple times. And you'll see that my passion for baking and combining it with chemistry has been there from the get-go, because I even did a PROTAC in cake form, as you can see here. Actually, many people have said that this actually looks better than some of the figures that they see in papers, because it is very, very neatly done. And so basically, just the last slide, really, just to summarize the chemistry side of things of all of this, was here you'll see an inhibitor for HDAC. And what we did is I grew this, so I added a linker, I added a ligand onto this, and then through many years of extensive modification and optimization, and published a few papers and patents, we've got a series of active molecules, which was absolutely fantastic. They were the first of their kind to target these particular proteins, so it was a really, really rewarding PhD. And you'll see here, just as a snapshot as one of them, you'll see this one's called JPS016, and don't get worried about too much of that's going on in the slide. I just focus on the top bar at the top level of this one on the right hand side, which says HDAC1, and you can just see that as you go from left to right across the page, you can see that the amount or the strength of or intensity of that band decreases. So you can see that that HDAC enzyme is being degraded, and that was the overall premise of my whole PhD, was to develop this new set of molecules to degrade these enzymes, which is the first time it's been done for these particular enzymes, and these have potential applications as biological tools or also as potential as therapeutics going forwards. So that's a snapshot of my research, but now I'm going to completely change tack and go onto the baking. And the baking, as you'll all hopefully have seen, last year went to another level as I entered into the famous white tent of the Great British Bake Off, which is the most incredible experience I've ever had. It was just amazing from start to finish. Challenged me in so many different ways. I never envisaged I would get onto the show, let alone progressing through to the final. And it was just so rewarding all the way through. And I've always been a very, very creative person, everything I do. So being given the license to just go wild and create these spectacular bakes was just incredible. I loved every minute of it. And if there's any questions about any of the bakes or my experiences on Bake Off, please do add some questions in the comment, because I love to talk about it and I love to answer it. But one thing that was really key for me, for anybody that watched me on the show, and that is that every bake that I did had a really, really strong story to it, and I loved to tell the stories. And whilst I was on the show, there's not enough time to have heard all the stories along the way, because the program is only an hour each week, and if there was you could have just had an hour of me waffling on telling you about each of these bakes. But I had really strong stories for each one, and I tried to use them as an opportunity to showcase all of my hobbies and passions and interests. So I linked one to rugby, which is the top left. I linked one to my love of Christmas, which is the top right. I had one for Wimbledon tennis. I had one for burgers and fries, one of my favourite meals, one dedicated to growing things in the garden. So I had all manner of things, but one of them that was really special was week 4, which was chocolate week. And that was my one for chemistry. So it has a really lovely connection to the University of Leicester, because for this week, we had to make a box out of chocolate. And I chose this week to try and bring in my passion for chemistry in my bake. And I made this celebratory chocolate box, and it was just jam-packed full of all of this amazing chemistry from inside to out, and all manner of ways for the decoration. So for this Showstopper challenge, what we were tasked with doing is making a celebration chocolate box. And so what I did is, as we've got the centenary period for the School of Chemistry is coming up in 2025. So I felt that was a really lovely opportunity to use this Showstopper to showcase my passion for chemistry. And as it was meant to be for a celebration, it was to celebrate the School of Chemistry at the University of Leicester, which is where I'd spent so many of the previous years. And it was just a joy to put together. And you can see that I've got chemistry glassware cutouts in the panels of the box. I have got chemical structures piped on the lid of the box. I use the chemical elements to pipe words on the side of the box. And also, another little hidden fact that nobody on the show would have known, but I do. The stand at the bottom is a glass stand supported by little conical flasks, and that stand was made by Gail Price, who is the glass blower at the School of Chemistry and the university glass blower. And then the wooden panel that the whole thing was sat upon was actually from the undergraduate teaching lab when we had a clear out last summer. So there was really lovely connections to chemistry and Leicester University in the School of Chemistry all the way through this bake. So it was just a wonderful one to put together. And so what I thought I'd do now is I thought I'd just use this opportunity to showcase my love of trying to talk about the science behind baking, to go through some of the structures that we've got shown on the top of this bake, just to showcase my connection with baking and chemistry. So one of them on the top left here is butyric acid. And this is a compound that is found in American chocolate. It has quite a rancidy sort of taste to it, and sometimes me personally, I'm not a huge lover of American chocolate because it has a distinct taste to it, and it's this compound that is associated with that, but it does help prolong shelf life. That's probably why it is commercially used in the chocolate that they sell. The next one that I included was oleic acid, and this is a compound that is found in hazelnuts, which was one of the flavors that was inside this bake. So that's what a lot of these structures on the lid were, all structures that were, or they're all compounds that were inside the ingredients that I used in the bake. So it was trying to showcase what compounds are present in all the foods that we have, because chemistry is everywhere. So oleic acid is a long chain acid, fatty acid, found in hazelnuts, but it's also found in cocoa butter as well. And you'll see that it has a double bond present in the middle of the molecule, and that double bond is called a level of unsaturation, or unsaturated bond. And it's these bonds it's this unsaturation which makes this class as a healthy fat. So we know that we can have healthy fats or unhealthy fats, and this is a healthy fat because that double bond actually means that this acid actually exists as a liquid at room temperature, or an oil, so that if you was then to ingest it, it doesn't clog up anywhere in your arteries as you after you've had it. So it will stay as an oil and it'll go all the way through. Whereas if you have a saturated acid where you don't have that bond present, they exist as solids at room temperature, and that's where you can get these ones that can build up because they can clog your arteries. And the next one is sodium hydrogen carbonate, which is something which I use, or we all use in the chemistry lab all the time. It's used as an aqueous wash of a lot of our organic reactions, but it also doubles up as a very, very useful compound when in your baking, and you'll all know it as your sodium bicarbonate, or if you have baking powder, to help with the rising of all of your cakes. And you'll see the structure there that I've written, which is NaHCO3, and you could see therefore why the bubbles of CO2 that are released, you can see how you can get that from that structure, and that's what happens with it. So it has two methods of releasing CO2 to help your cakes rise. One of them is via heat. So when you bake your cake in the oven, it will rise because the heat decomposes the sodium hydrogen carbonate, releases CO2, which are the bubbles in your cake, and also it can it's got to do another way in which it can release CO2, which is because by acidity, because it is an alkaline compound. So if you were to add acid to this, you can release CO2 that way as well. And so that's sometimes why you might use lemon. It's got citric acid in a bake, and that can help with the rise. And this is the difference where when you have baking powder, so sodium hydrogen carbonate or bicarbonate of soda is different to baking powder, because baking powder has this double action in the fact that it contains the acid along with the alkali. So that's a double acting compound, or double acting thing, your baking powder, because what happens in there when you're making a cake, you've got your bicarb, and it can release the CO2 because the acid is inside the baking powder. So when you add it to a wet mixture, you're releasing CO2 via reacting with this acid, but also in the heat of putting it in the oven. So that helps with your cakes to rise. And then the next one as to go around is maltol. And this is a compound which is formed in the caramelization process of sugar. And caramel was a big feature of this bake that I did. We had to do filled chocolates on top of our cake that was inside the box. So you can see that the chocolates that are just hidden inside the lid of the box there had caramel on the inside, and they spelled chocolate on the actual chocolates themselves, using the chemical elements. And maltol, you'll see here, I've just put a little scheme in so you can see it. So starting with your sucrose, which is your just normal sugar that you've got in the cupboard, and when you heat it to make caramel, it breaks down, and that's where it releases all manner of other compounds en route. So sugar or sucrose will decompose at 160 degrees, so you've got to heat it really, really high. And that's one of those traditional things that you'll see in the bake-off tent. We're always making caramel, and it's often something that can often go wrong in the tent as well, because when you get to those high temperatures, you can very easily burn it. But yeah, so we make maltol. You heat your sugar, it decomposes into glucose and fructose, and then we heat it even more, and that's when it releases all these amazing flavor compounds and color compounds as well, which gives caramel that really distinct look. It has that lovely brown colour, but it also has these amazing mix of flavours. You've got maltol, which is, as you can see there, it gives it a toasty flavour. You get a nuttiness from the different furans that are released, and then the butteriness from the diacetyls as well. So there's a lot that goes on in the caramelization process, and it's all down to the chemistry inside, is what's creating this incredible caramel that we get at the end. And then another compound is vanillin. So vanillin, as you can imagine, is the flavor compound in vanilla. And there's a big difference between whether you have vanilla extract or vanilla essence, and that is because your vanilla extract, you'll see them in the shops, you can buy 2 of them, and you'll often find that your vanilla extract is a lot more expensive than your essence, and that's because the vanilla extract contains the vanilla beans, or from the actual bean pod itself. It contains the natural vanilla, with natural vanillin for the flavour. However, vanilla essence contains a synthetic vanillin, so it's actually lab made. It's still the same compound, it's lab made. However, they never taste quite as good. It's cheaper because it can be made on bulk synthetically, but it's never quite as good. Always use vanilla extract when you're doing your baking. And then the final compound here is phenylethylamine, and this is a compound which is nicknamed a chocolate amphetamine, or the love drug, and it's a neurotransmitter which is actually released itself in the brain, and it stimulates pleasure centers. So it gives you that feeling of euphoria or happiness, and it's all associated with phenylethylamine. And this compound is actually contained within chocolate itself, and so that's why, therefore, chocolate has been nicknamed the love drug, because it has this compound in it, and therefore everyone associates with eating chocolate and this feeling of euphoria. However, I'm sorry to break it to you, but the actual phenylethylamine that is in your chocolate is metabolized after you eat it, long before it gets to the brain. So that's a bit of a misconception, but I think it's still something that's going to stick with chocolate forever, and it'll always have that nickname. And there are other compounds that are in your chocolate that do act as stimulants, and they're more likely the compounds that are to associate with why chocolate does give you that feel-good effect when you eat it. And so finally, just sort of bringing that together, I mentioned earlier how baking is a science, and I said there's so many transferable skills that I take from the lab into doing my baking, and from the baking into doing the lab. And I just put a few of them here, and I could go on forever telling you about how they all link with in the lab or in the tent. So the biggest one, whenever I got asked questions about the bake-off, was about how do you think your career in science helped you the most? And I think the organisation was one of the biggest things, because I would always go into the chemistry lab being really organised and prepared for what I'm going to go and make, and therefore that it's exactly the same process for me approach to baking, and obviously for bake-off as well. I was very, very prepared for the bakes, and which that set me in really good stead, because it meant that I knew what I was doing, and I could just get through it straight away. There's also the time management's a really big one. So I've been used as a PhD student running around looking after students in the lab, doing a bit of teaching, balancing my research, writing papers and everything. So I'm very good at balancing multiple things, and that was definitely a key part of Bake Off, being able to juggle doing many things at once and work into a very, very short time to do a lot of these bakes. Problem solving is a really big one as well, because in the bake-off tent, under that pressure, there's many times you end up with something goes wrong, there's a hiccup, and you've got to be able to think on your feet really quickly. And I think the years in working in the lab and the experience of just know how to react to problems that arise, that definitely helped me in the tent as well. And yeah, I could it's endless. I could go on about all of them, and I think there's just so many amazing overlaps between the two. And I always say when I'm asked, and I just say, I'm in the lab, the lab is just, I mix things in a flask, I heat them, and I get a product at the end, and it's exactly the same in the kitchen. I put ingredients into a bowl, mix them together, put them in the oven, and I get a product at the end. Just the big winner with your baking is that you get to eat it at the end, whereas you don't get that with your science. So I think following on from that, post Bake Off, combining baking and trying to balance what I'm going to do going forwards, I've definitely approached my research and my baking in a very new light on the back of Bake Off. I think one thing I've experienced as a chemist going for the last few years is you have a very broad understanding, and you come out of your degree course, and then you spend if you continue to do a PhD, you then specialise and you find your area, you'll find the bit that you're really, really good at. And I think I'm just beginning to hit that point now with my baking as well. Whereas I look back even just a couple of years ago now, I love to try my hand at everything. And I always tried loads of different ways of doing bakes, but the experience of Bake Off now has really honed my skill, and I really know now exactly what my style is, and I've definitely got my own unique style and the way that I like to decorate or present a bake or tell a really lovely story in a bake. So I can see again the overlaps of how my chemistry journey and my baking journey have a lot of similarities. And so I'm just loving being back in the lab and doing the research alongside the baking still. And the baking creations have continued. I've had an extremely busy last few months, and been doing lots of baking outside of the university, but I've also done a lot of baking still in the university or linked to the university. And I just put a few little things here on this slide. We've got a mocha flavoured showstopper cake on the far left, which I did for an important meeting at the in the School of Chemistry a couple of months ago, and that was again using showcasing lots of the compounds that you find in the caffeine or in chocolate, decorated on the bake along with the university crest. I did some chocolate macarons for Chemistry Week before Christmas, again spelling out chocolate using the chemical elements on there. I did the School of Chemistry pancakes, which is something which I've always done for many years now at the in the department, and that's a really, really good fun thing to do, and it went from strength to strength. And this year was the biggest one yet, making a few hundred pancakes for everybody to come and enjoy. And we do our liquid nitrogen ice cream, and it's a really, really good networking activity for everybody, so that everyone gets a little bit of break from their research for a bit. And I also did a really lovely Christmas showstopper for the Vice Chancellor Nishan before Christmas as well, for his senior leadership team. He wanted to do a special meeting just before Christmas, and I said I'd do a cake. So I did a lovely cake here, and I decorated it with these flowers. It's meant to be like poinsettia, but I used these 5-star 5-point petal flower cutters to use to create that, and that was in homage to the 5-petal flower that we have on the crest of the University of Leicester. So I love to tell little stories through all of my bakes. And then the final thing to talk about is something that's a really big project, which is going to be coming up in actually being opened in the next couple of weeks, which is the Science Kitchen. So this has been a big thing in the making over the last few months, and looking towards now going forwards, I really would love to use my opportunity on the back of Bake Off to showcase the science behind cooking and baking to a really wide audience now, and reach out to the wider public, schools and colleges, and try and just showcase this overlap in a really great way. And it's great that the university have been able to support me to do this. So this is going to be a really big project that we're going to be doing, and this is going to be for it'll benefit students and staff on campus. We'll do videos which we can release really wide to try and get participation and interest and engagement in chemistry and all the sciences through something like baking, just showcasing science in the real world. And it's a dedicated space on campus where we're going to do this, and I cannot wait to do all manner of projects that we've got lined up in that space. One of them is doing some work with the Space Centre, which we will be recording and we'll be doing throughout this year, and it's just going to be absolutely fantastic. So watch this space, and listen out, and there'll be lots of things along this sort of line going forward. So there's some fantastic projects coming up. And so that really just brings it to a close, really, just showcasing my journey at the University of Leicester, some of the research that I've done along the way, my experiences from Bake Off, and then how my love of chemistry and baking all intertwines, and it's helped me in my baking and my research. And I know I've probably finished just about to time, maybe a couple of minutes early, but hopefully that gives us a fantastic opportunity to have lots of questions.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Josh. That was absolutely fascinating. Bit of a bombshell about chocolate. I always thought it was a bit of a stimulant, but as you say, it's the other ingredients. So that's really interesting. And just fantastic to learn about how science impacts on baking. And it's really encouraging to see that you're taking your experiences of Bake Off and bringing them to Leicester and then to a wider audience through social media. And the Science Kitchen sounds absolutely fantastic. So hopefully we'll hear more about that from you with your various social media channels. So thank you so much for a fantastic talk. We have got quite a few questions already, but I would like to encourage the audience, if you have got some questions that have just occurred to you, please put them in the chat, because we do have a little bit of time now to explore some of the questions that you've posed. So are you ready? The first question.
Yeah, go for it.
Number
This is,
one.
I've done a few talks in the last few months, and I love it when there's loads of questions, because I can go into all avenues, and we get such a fantastic array, and it's actually the best part of the talk. Actually, is the question. So yeah, fire away.
Okay, brace yourself. Right, number one. What is your proudest and most challenging bake? And it says here in brackets, either at home or on telly, or I suppose you could answer both.
Oh, I'll definitely refer to the Bake Off for this, I think, because there were so many, and it's hard to pick them all. And they have proud moments for different reasons. But I think my favourite one, proudest one, was going to be the semi-final showstopper, which was a puff pastry layered dessert. It was called a mille fogli. I think it's an Italian version of the French mille-feuille, and it was it was just a joy to put together. And I remember that was one of those bakes where when Prue came into the tent to do the judging, she had her eyes just lit up. She gave me a little wink, and she was like, she clapped her hands. She was like, that's just what I wanted. I knew that it connected with it. I know I've got, because I used to do, and my nan was my biggest passion for entering the Bake Off. And I know I used to go to loads of national trusts with her, and I loved, going to an afternoon tea is my dream, is what I love to do. So I've got a very classical style, and it really hit a chord with Prue, and she loved it. So I think that was one of my proudest ones. But also the chocolate box was my proudest. It was a really proud one as well, because on the day in the tent, it didn't turn out as well as I'd have liked, and it wasn't actually my fault, because they mixed up my ingredients, but that never made the edit. But we won't talk about that. But it was one of those moments where there was an issue in the middle, because I was having to play catch up, and I thought I was never going to finish it, and somehow I just turned it around, and I still produced a really amazing showstopper at the end. It's one of the things I look back now, I just don't know how I managed to put it together, but it's just in the moment you just concentrate and you can just do it, and it was incredible. So although actually it wasn't my favorite bake, it was one of my proudest moments, and that was also probably one of the most challenging ones as well, because I had a problem in the middle of it, and I had to try and find a solution whilst being filmed. And whilst you're being filmed, they want to stick their cameras when things are going wrong. They want to have a look, and they want to say, well, what's going on there? Just think, can you just leave me alone, please? I just really want to focus right now. So yeah, to come through that and out the other side, that was amazing. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. What feels the best, the Hollywood handshake or the Prue wink?
Prue's wink. Prue was again, she's like the queen of patisserie, and I love my decorative style and doing patisserie and things like that, and doing small things really pretty. So yeah, I think when I got the comments from Prue, that was that was really special. But then the Hollywood handshake is something up there as well, and I had so many amazing showstoppers, especially from weeks 5 to 9, they were just I remember being in a tent, they were pretty much flawless every time. They couldn't find any faults. And it was just, I just loved it, because there was so much praise mounted on you. It was just amazing. I just loved it.
Yeah. I remember watching it and thinking you're kind of storming it from the very beginning. So it was really impressive. Right, I have question 2. What made you choose Leicester to study your PhD? So back to science with this one.
Yes, so it ended up being a very straightforward choice in the end, and it came on the back of my year in industry. So I said I worked at Signature and Discovery in Nottingham, and I did I was in the lab for an entire year, doing organic medicinal chemistry, synthetic chemistry, and but I loved the multidisciplinary environment that they had at Signature. So I was in the medicinal chemistry department, but then there was biosciences, there was the computational chemists, and there was other sectors, and I just loved the way they all worked together on a project. So they all people did separate bits and all came together. And having seen that, I really wanted in my PhD to do something whereby I got to experience this multidisciplinary PhD, so I could have a go at other stuff. And I'd done my MChem, my master's project with James Hodgkinson, and we discussed during that time about the opportunities that I could do. And then when it came about, I just said, yeah, I'd love to do that. So my whole PhD project, I had a huge say in what molecules we made. So it's a real passion project for me because it started from nothing, and through 5 years, I had conception of the idea, designed the molecules, made the molecules, purified the molecules. I took them over to biology. I tested them on assays in the biology lab. I grew the cancer cells, I tested them on the cells, and then I analysed the results. So from conception all the way through to the end, I was able to be part of the whole process. So that was the most rewarding thing I could have been part of, and that's why I chose Leicester.
Brilliant, fantastic answer. Thank you so much, and great to hear more about your research, and the link it has to cancer research is fascinating. So question 3 is, this is going to put you on the spot a bit actually. Who is your favourite academic at the University of Leicester? I don't know who's I don't know whether this is one of your colleagues who's posted this, but I'd like to add a second part to that question, which is, can I add who was your favourite host on the Bake Off? So favourite academic, favourite host.
The favourite academic is quite an easy one really, because it's been it's been part of the journey all the way through, because he's been examiner for me, but also he's been to quizzes with me. So I love Paul Cullis all the way through, because I remember him teaching me when I was, when I first came through. I did tutorials with him, but then he comes to the end. We do an annual pub quiz at the Leicester Tigers, and we've been doing it now for 4 or 5 years, and we love to do it. We just did it last month actually, and we've been doing it for a few years, and we just keep getting better and better. And this year we came second, so we've now won a hospitality table at a game next season at the Tigers. So yeah, I think I'd have to say Paul. I think he'd know that as well. And then in terms of on the Bake Off, well, I don't know who my favourite would be. I mean, I love Prue, so I think she was my big favourite of mine. But they were all wonderful, and Noel in particular for me was just so genuine. He was exactly in real life like he is on the Bake Off. He doesn't put anything on. He's genuinely that just nice a chap, and it was really lovely because so we film over 2 days. On the second day, the showstopper day, he would always bring in his kids onto the set, and he'd show them round, and he's just lovely. He's just such a lovely chap. So yeah, and he loves the job. You can tell it's a job for him that just fits his lifestyle perfectly, because if he films it at these weekends, he brings his kids along, and he just loves it. So he really was lovely.
Oh, that's really nice to hear. I'd agree with you actually, because we're working together, aren't we, with Paul to organise the centenary celebrations for the School of Chemistry next year. And I've always found Paul, I don't know whether he's listening, he's going to be lapping up this praise, but I've always...
He is listening. I've probably got an email from him any minute now. But yeah, no, obviously I've been helping out with the doing the liquid nitrogen ice cream for many years now.
Yeah, you have.
We need to pass the torch on to more people so they know how to do it. But it just seems that every time something comes round, it's always the same few people that we get wheeled out to come and do it. And I love to do it still. I love to still do it. It's great fun.
Yes, for everybody listening, Josh and Paul and the chemistry team do support the Darrow team when we have a stewardship event. They're often there making really tasty ice cream out of liquid nitrogen. So if ever you come along to a Darrow event, it's really worth trying, because it's absolutely gorgeous. I thought it would be disgusting, but it's lovely. Brilliant. So on to the next question. Number 4, this is from Anna, are you going to recreate the chemistry box cake that you just featured in your presentation at the centenary celebrations next year? Because she thinks it would go down a storm.
Yes, I will. However, there are some contractual things with the Bake Off. I'm not allowed to do it exactly the same. So I will do another chocolate box. I'll do a slight twist. My baking has elevated even since then, so I'll do a different interior for the box. Maybe we'll do a much bigger box as well. But yeah, I will definitely. I've already been thinking. I've definitely got to do a recreation of that tempered chocolate panel. But yeah, I'll do much bigger panels, and we can make something really spectacular out of it. I'd love to.
Oh, brilliant. That sounds fantastic. Yeah, just remind everybody, the School of Chemistry is celebrating its centenary next spring. So we're hoping to run an event on campus in May, and we'll be doing a little bit of fundraising as well to support chemistry students who are struggling a little bit at the moment to participate in summer internships, that kind of thing. So you'll be hearing more from us about that as and when we've got more details. The next
And I'm
question.
sure the science kitchen will make a very big appearance.
Yes.
As well.
Perfect timing.
It should be up and running well by then. It's it's so many incredible projects already lined up for this year. So yeah, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, that will be exciting to have that up and running. So this is a bit of a controversial question, actually. Question 5. How much help do bakers have on the show?
So we don't get any help to do the bake when we're on the tent. There's a food producer that we liaise with in the build up to that episode. So they'll just help build our we send in the brief of what we're going to make, and then they'll just check through it, make sure it fits the brief. If they think you were really lacking in something, they'd have told you, and so you might want to consider this, but nobody actually helps you. The briefs themselves, we have to prepare all of them before any filming takes place. So those that go out in week 1 or week 2 have in theory prepared for many, many weeks, but they don't get to do them. And I think that's where, for me, I think that was my biggest strength, is my preparation and organisation. I was very, very prepared up front, practiced everything. And when it came through to getting through each week, I'd already had a very clear vision in mind of what I was making for the next week. And therefore, the week building up to it was just sort of like tweaking little bits, fine tuning with decoration, making sure that I could successfully do it in the time frame. And I think that's really rewarded me, because everybody was saying in the show, and whilst the show aired, Josh, you're one of the calmest bakers we've ever had, because there was never any problems. I just got through it because I knew exactly. I had my timer from the lab, actually, and a biolabs one is what I had counting down and what's on there. And I just knew once I hit particular checkpoints at this time point, I need to be starting this and then starting this and ticking things off. And it just meant that I knew exactly where I was at. So it really helped me, because it meant that I didn't have that stress. And most of the time, things all went to plan, apart from the one I mentioned.
I think you were definitely the coolest customer on that show. And do you think it's your scientific background, the kind of discipline of preparing, is something that you benefit from as a baker?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I mentioned it on the talk. I'd always go into a lab really prepared, and knowing exactly what I'm going to do, exactly what I'm going to weigh out, exactly how to do that procedure, because it might need to be cooled to very specific temperatures, and then I've got a stirring period for an hour, then I add another reagent, then I add something else. So I just I know what I've got to do. So it'd be exactly the same entering when I was entering the tent. I just knew exactly what I've got to do. It's just that normally when you're at home, you'd make a cake, wouldn't you? Then you'd think, well, I'll just leave that to cool now. I'm going to have a walk around the garden, going to get a bit of cake, have a lunch. But whereas you were having to try and find a way, like, well, whilst this is cooling, I've got half an hour, I've got to make everything else now. So it was just trying to find the ways in which you could slot it all together and then put it all together at the end. And I made sure, I love to do my decoration. I love to have a creative finish on everything. So I tried to make sure that I had half an hour at the end of every bake for the showstoppers, where I just had the license just to do the decoration and make sure it had a nice finish.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, your decorations, I thought, always look absolutely beautiful. We have a very specific question now. This is this is really specific. Do you know why long life milk makes much frothier milk for cappuccinos than ordinary fresh milk does? It must be the chemistry.
Oh, I don't know for that one. That might be one of the ones that goes on my list of things to cover in the science kitchen. I've had quite a lot of things being fielded, and I'm going to slowly go through them all. So no, I don't know on that one. I'll have to get back to you on that one. We'll cover that topic as one of our ones.
You could have a coffee special, couldn't you? Or Brilliant. Next question. The university is clearly giving you brilliant opportunities for research and teaching, as well as using your baking. But can you foresee a time when you might work in food industry or pharma? I can recommend the latter.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because if I look back to my approach to what I was going to do as a career path 12, 18 months ago, I was very, very unsure. I didn't really know what to pursue. And I think, the Bake Off just seems to, at the moment, it's just giving me this huge buzz. I've got a really for the first time, really, I've got a really clear vision of exactly what I want to do. And I would always want to stay in chemistry and have an element of research or teaching potentially, but I would really love to try and use combine my two passions together and going forward, sort of like, as you know, science outreach and communication, and showcase chemistry and science in the real world. Baking is a wonderful tool to do that through, and do that, yeah, really, and just reach out. I feel at the moment, especially on the back of COVID, the sciences, chemistry in particular, is really suffering. There's a big drop in numbers. There's a big drop in engagement in it, and because chemistry has the most amount of contact hours of any of the degree course, that suffered a lot in COVID. I just really would love to see if I could play a really small part in trying to get the engagement in chemistry up again, and I think this could be a really lovely way of doing that. So I would love to try and reach really far, aiming at primary schools, secondary schools, colleges, and use this as a way to try and get them all involved. And some of the projects I've got lined up, for example, with the Space Centre, it's just going to be absolutely wonderful to showcase seeing science and baking together.
Yeah, I think so. You potentially plans are to go into schools and help with kind of widening participation, that kind of thing. Would be brilliant, I think, because you're with your profile and how much fun you are to listen to. I think that would be fantastic. I know that our space team sometimes go out to primary schools with a mobile planetarium, and they came to my son's school, and it's just a great age, isn't it, to get kids interested in science.
Yeah, and I did a webinar for Chemistry World on right at the end of March, which was the first sort of like thing I did in the kitchen, and it was really well received. We had a couple of thousand people watch that, and it was just amazing. And I want to go about doing this so I don't stand there in a white lab coat and it's just splurting out loads of science and everyone gets bored. It's trying to do it the other way around and try and showcase baking and little bits of science that underpin certain things. And the webinar was fantastic, and what I'd love to try and do is similar things to that. I've got live demos. I can showcase some of the baking elements, and we can flick between doing that along with some slides or bits on the actual chemistry that's happening or the science that's happening in that process. And yeah, we've got so many ideas going forwards. And where the science kitchen is on campus, it is in a spot which is directly in the middle of the College of Science and Engineering. So it's going to be a lovely hub for people to go and do events from. So we could have a lecture duelled with going into the kitchen to go and learn a bit more, or actually taste something afterwards.
Brilliant, thank you. I've just got one last question, which is what advice would you give to anyone watching this evening who is interested in applying for the Bake Off? I would imagine it's quite a hugely competitive process. So any tips you have to share?
Yeah, very competitive. I think they get about 20,000 people apply. So yeah, it's amazing. The biggest thing for me, I mean, I can see firsthand how much I've developed over the last few years, and just I think the biggest thing is to be able to have a very broad spectrum of baking that you can do. So if you just focus on cakes, then it's definitely worth trying a bit of bread or doing some pastry, or if you've already done a particular type of pastry before, looking at doing different ones. So if you've done short crust, can you have a go at puff pastry or choux pastry, or all manner of different things, or Danish pastry, and just try the different stuff. Working on the finesse, the decoration, photographing your work. That would be the biggest thing for me, is build up a portfolio, because as part of the application process, they want to see what you can do, and so you're going to have to provide evidence, photos of what you've made. So if you have a social media account where you can document it, or if you just save them somewhere, then you've got that wonderful portfolio to send to them what you've made. So yeah, that would be my biggest thing, is a nice range of baking, so you've tried a bit of everything, and working on the decoration and presentation of it, and then taking photos of it as well. And the presentation, actually how we have to present the bakes on the show, that was something which was really instilled upon us, was to try and make them fulfill the brief as a showstopper. And we were encouraged to make our own presentation boards. Now, not very few actually did make the boards, I think because of the time frame we had, but I made the conscious effort to make sure we did. So every week I got through, first thing I do, tell my dad, Dad, we're into another week, we've got to make another board. So we'd make a new board to present the next week's 2 bakes on. So all of the showstoppers, if you see them from the show, you'll have seen they all had these unique boards. We'd cut a bit of wood, we'd paint it, we'd decorate it so it would theme with the bake. So for the tennis one, we had tennis balls on there. For the floral week one, I had hibiscus stencils, which I'd painted on there. And I just think it just gave that overall, just brought it all as to one thing, and it just really helped tell the story. So again, showing that you can tell stories through bakes, I think, is also probably really good thing to do for Bake Up as well. Have a go at a couple of showstoppers.
Great, brilliant advice. I think it was a travesty that you didn't win, but I'll stop there. I don't know whether anyone wants to comment on that, but but no, thank you for those hints and tips. I think we probably need to draw the talk to a close now, but I'd just like to say a huge thank you again to Josh for spending the time to speak to us this evening. It's been absolutely fascinating from a scientific and from a showbiz perspective. So thank you so much, Josh. I've just got a few things to finish off saying, which is to remind our audience, thank you so much to you guys for joining this evening. If you have a spare moment, if you could take the time to fill in the post-event evaluation form, which we are putting on the chat now, that would be really appreciated. We're really passionate about our Festival of Change talks, and any suggestions you might have on future guests or different formats would be very much appreciated. Make sure to keep in touch with our alumni events on our University of Leicester alumni page. So yeah, just look at all the exclusive events that we've got planned for the foreseeable future. We would love to have you attend, whether it's virtually or in person, and keep up to date with other activities on our Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn pages for future events. I don't know whether, Josh, you'd like to mention some of your social media platforms to end with, just so people can keep in touch with all of your activities.
Yeah, so all of mine are the same. They're all Josh P. Smalley, and I have a website as well where you can, which takes you through to all of it, and it's got inquiries formed, and it shows you all the recipes of all the bakes that I do as well, and that's just joshsmalley.com. So if anybody wants to interact with anything on there, then they can do. And yeah, watch out, because the science kitchen will be open very soon, and there'll be a lot of stuff coming from me and the university about that, because it's going to be a fantastic thing we're going to do together.
Brilliant. I'll be checking out those recipes. Thank you so much, Josh. And thank you so much to the audience. You've been fantastic from all over the world. It really is humbling to have you join us this evening, and you've posed some great questions. So all that remains for me to say is thank you, and have a lovely rest of your evening, and see you soon. Bye.